Hey everybody, welcome, welcome to Hidden Horror. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate that. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Hidden Horror. How are you guys doing today? Today we're jumping right in. We have so much to discuss, to go over, to deal with in the Sean Combs case. I don't want to waste any time. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying hydrated. It has been hot and I want you to stay cool. Okay. So this video is going to cover a lot of information. We're going to talk about the last day of the trial, date 29. We're going to talk about the fact that Sean Combs chose not to testify. We're going to talk about what's going on with this idea that charges were dropped. Charges were not dropped. It's just what the prosecutor is focusing on to prove the two charges, the racketeering and conspiracy charges. They're focusing on different evidence. So they had these two pieces of evidence that they were going to focus on, which was the Capricorn alleged kidnapping and the Kid Cudi alleged arson. And they're saying, okay, we're not going to focus on that. We have more evidence, easier evidence to deal with, to handle, that will prove and support these two charges. We're going to use this other evidence. And other evidence is the sex trafficking allegedly, and also what they're calling is forced labor, people forced to work. Okay. So the charges did not get dropped. They're just using different evidence to prove, to support those allegations. Okay. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to wrap it all up and say, hey, Sean Combs' trial is nearing the end. We are at the end. Okay, the prosecution and the defense, they have given their closing arguments. The prosecution gave their rebuttal, and now this case is almost ready to be handed to the jury for them to deliberate. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to first start with day 29 testimony. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, I want to say thank you to Fox 5 New York. They were there providing a recap daily of the events of the trial, and it really helped me because I wasn't able to physically attend the trial. So I'll use their platform, the information that they prepare daily, to give you these updates that I gave you in increments of 7 days. And now we're on day 29. So let's go over what happened during day 29. Now, day 29 was June 17th. The judge addresses a leak and the freak off video was shown. Okay. Tensions are rising at the courthouse as both the prosecution and defense face scrutiny from the judge over leaked, sealed information. Judge Arun Subramanian expressed frustration over the leak of sealed information from a private meeting, which appeared in an online article. He warned lead counsels Mark Agnifilo for the defense and Maureen Comey for the prosecution that they could face civil or criminal penalties. Following the judge's warning, the trial proceeded with testimony from a federal special agent who presented records of Combs' financial activities related to freak-offs, including hotel furniture charges and plane tickets. Jurors viewed a video clip of Combs and Cassie during a freak-off, while the court reviewed text messages between them discussing plans for these events. The casual nature of their planning was likened to typical dinner reservations, highlighting the routine aspect of these gatherings. Okay, so that was day 29. They're saying they reviewed these text messages. It sounds very normal, very casual, that this was something that was happening on an ongoing basis very regularly, likened to ordering dinner, making plans, making reservations. That's how common this activity was at that time in the lives of Sean Combs and Cassandra Ventura. Okay, so we're done with that article, Fox 5 New York. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on because we have so many things that we need to go and talk about. So let's talk about that. Sean Combs, he did not testify, right? He didn't testify in his own on his own behalf. Some people, and I'm going to switch. I'm going to pull up a picture of Mr. Combs. Okay. So I just like to have a picture when I talk about a person. So he did testify on his own behalf. Some people, they may not realize, but in most cases, the defendant will not testify. The defendant is actually advised by counsel to not testify. Usually, counsel does not want the defendant to testify because it opens the defendant up for the cross examination by the prosecutor. So you can get all of your conversation out, everything you want out. However, you're more vulnerable with that cross examination where they can go into areas that maybe you didn't want to go into or topics that you don't want to talk about. You can't change your mind. You can't say, well, I changed my mind now. I don't want to answer these questions. It doesn't work like that. So I believe that a good defense attorney, or most defense attorneys, will advise their client not to testify. A lot of people felt that Mr. Combs, that he didn't testify because it would open him up to answer some of those harder questions, um, more so about the trafficking, the alleged drugs, the alleged forced labor, and so on and so on. Okay. Um, I think overall it's very common for defendants not to testify for their own peril. They're not uh, used to sparring. They're not used to, being aggressively questioned. They may not be used to someone asking them something embarrassing. Um, it could really go in a different direction. Now, some people may say, well, if he felt that the prosecutor didn't do a good job, they didn't cover all their bases, they couldn't really prove the charges, why testify? Why put anybody on to extend this trial that, again, they're going to be opened up? Any witness is going to be opened up to cross examination, not just Mr. Combs. So it could go either way, right? So I just think it's wise. If you're concerned about your client, you don't want them to testify. But let's go to the article. We have an article to go over about this and a short video, okay? This article is provided by the HollywoodReporter.com. Now, we're moving fast today because we have a lot to cover, but all of the links, all of the articles, any video is going to be on the Hidden Horror Facebook page. And I want to thank my beautiful 61 followers, subscribers, whatever you want to call yourselves. Thank you for following the page. Thank you for watching the content. Thank you for all of your comments, your kindness. I love your opinions. Just keep posting them. Thank you very much, okay, for all of your support. This article is titled, Sean Diddy Combs Tells Judge He Will Not testify at his trial. Okay. So the judge is going to ask him, Mr. Combs, do you want to testify? How do you feel about testify? Has your counsel spoken to you about testifying? You have a right, if you choose to testify on your own behalf, okay? This is your right. You get to choose. They can advise you, they can tell you, they can counsel you, they can talk to you about it, they can tell you the upside and the downside, they can prepare you for cross examination, they can give you their opinion, but it is up to you, Mr. Combs. If you choose you want to, or if you choose you don't want to testify. Okay, this is your case, charges against you. And if you choose to testify, you can, but if you don't want to testify, you don't have to. And the jury cannot take any ideas about you not testifying. They can't say, well, this person, they don't appear to be honest, they appear to be guilty, I don't believe them as much. Oh, I really want to hear Mr. Combs. Oh, I really like Mr. Combs and I want to know what his thoughts are. They can't take any ideas, any type of judgment if you choose not to testify. Okay, so this article is dated June 25th, 2025. It's by Kevin Dolock, and it reads as follows. After federal prosecutors completed 6 weeks of evidence and testimony backing up their indictment of hip hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs on Tuesday, the defendant told the judge at his federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial that he will not be taking the stand to testify in his own defense. Federal prosecutors rested their case Tuesday after 6 weeks of testimony from Combs' ex girlfriends, personal assistants, federal agents, and various members of his once powerful media and music empire, which the feds argue was a criminal enterprise used to traffic men and women and coerce others into sex marathons. The defense rested later in the afternoon without calling a single witness. So Mr. Combs did not testify, and also they did not put one witness. The defense did not put one witness on the stand, not Mr. Combs' mother, not any of Mr. Combs' kids, not any of Mr. Combs' friends, not any of Mr. Combs' associates, not anyone that was involved in the music industry, not any of his peers, not anyone from any of his businesses, not anyone from any of his background, his childhood, friend. They didn't put anybody on. Tell me what you think about that. But again, if you put a witness on the stand, the prosecution can then cross examine them. And that opens them up to any subject matter. Okay. So they felt confident that the prosecution did not meet. They have to feel confident that they did not meet the standard to prove all of these various charges. Okay. Let's continue. The defense rested later in the afternoon without calling a single witness. U.S. District Judge Aaron Submarine asked how Combs was and whether he would be testifying at the trial where, if found guilty, he could face life in prison. Okay. Mr. Combs was asked, how are you feeling? Okay. The judge asked him that. He said, I'm doing great, Your Honor, Combs told Sumerian. I want to tell you, thank you. You're doing an excellent job. Combs then told the judge that he had thoroughly discussed the pros and cons of testifying with his team of attorneys and ultimately decided against taking the stand. He said, "That is my decision, Your Honor. That is solely my decision," he said, adding to clarify, "I mean, it's my decision with my lawyers, my decision to make. I'm making it." Well, what if he got on the stand, right? I have to do this, y'all, because it's just like, are they going to ask him those hardcore questions? Would they have asked him? And would he have said simply, everyone does this? Everyone's involved in open relationships. Everyone has multiple women. Everyone has the ability to date a lot of women when you're at this status, when you reach this level. You don't commit to anybody. You're unmarried. And if you want to, you can date women, you can date men, and you can date other groups, okay? So it would have just brought things and brought more out if they had to cross-examine him. So I think it was a good idea that he didn't testify. Let's continue. The judge asking the defendant directly if they wish to testify before the court is a formality and ensures that he is making the decision on his own, so he can't be forced. He can't be threatened to do it. He can't be bribed to not testify. It has to be on his own free will, okay? During the trial, Judge Samarian had to admonish Combs for interactions with the jury. On several occasions during testimony, the defendant gestured at jurors following a successful cross-examination. Prosecutors noted this to the judge as a form of testifying without cross-examination. Combs was threatened with removal from his trial if he did not stop the interactions. So he's using his charm, right? He's using that charisma, that made him famous. Okay, let's continue. On Tuesday, the defense asked the judge to toss out the case, arguing that the charges were not proven by the prosecutors. This is also a formality in a criminal trial. Judge Samarian has not yet issued a decision. Combs has pleaded not guilty to 5 counts contained in an indictment, including sex trafficking and racketeering. He has remained incarcerated without bail in Brooklyn after 3 judges concluded he would be a danger to the community and may potentially attempt to influence witnesses ahead of the trial. From some things that I read, and we're done with this article. From some things that I read about Mr. Combs, allegedly some of the witnesses felt threatened and they felt safer with him incarcerated at that time when they talked to him. They felt better about him being in custody and not free on the street, okay? So let's go to a short video. So we're going to stop looking at Mr. Combs momentarily and just check out a short video that's going to cover this. Okay, so this video is by CBS Mornings. It's titled Prosecution, Defense Rests in Sean Diddy Combs Case with the Music Mogul Not Testifying. It's about 2.5 minutes long, so I just want to enlarge it so we can really focus in.
Turning now to the federal sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. We learned this week he will not take the stand as the trial nears its completion. Drika Duncan has been at the courthouse and is here with an update. Drika, good morning. What's the latest?
Good morning. Yes, I'm back because I've been covering this story for the last 7 weeks. Combs stood up in court and addressed the judge Tuesday. He commended the judge, telling him he was doing a, quote, excellent job. And when the judge asked how Combs was doing, he said he was doing great. Combs said that after discussing with his lawyers, he decided he would not take the stand. His defense rested its case in less than 30 minutes, calling no witnesses. The prosecution, over the course of 6 weeks, called 34 witnesses to the stand, most notably his former partner, Cassie Ventura Fine, who testified for nearly a week. Prosecutors allege Combs coerced Ventura and another ex-girlfriend into drug-fueled freak-offs, also known as hotel nights. The defense has argued all the sexual encounters were consensual. The jury also heard from former employees of Combs. We are now done hearing from the witnesses since the prosecution and defense both rested their case.
So what happens now?
So next, we are going to look at the jurors. Essentially, they don't have to come into court today because they're handling some legal processes, if you will. But then the judge is expected to issue the instructions to them on Friday, which is when they could start deliberating. But tomorrow is when we're going to hear the closing arguments from both the prosecution and defense.
That must have been quite a moment to hear Sean Combs say to the judge, "You're doing an excellent job."
And that he's doing okay.
Yeah.
Early on in this, I remember he expressed that he was nervous at the very beginning of this trial. He said that out loud. So you never know which way these jurors are going to sway in terms of what they believe, what they didn't believe. But a lot of people have been asking me, well, what do you think is going to happen?
Yes.
And we just don't know. So I'm going to leave it to the hands of the
Only 30
jurors.
minutes.
I was one of those people. Jerika walked in. Jerika, what do you think is going to happen?
But only 30 minutes.
Well, it's because I think the idea is that they felt they did a good enough job with the cross-examination of all of those witnesses, that why bring in more people? These jurors, I mean, not that that's a total consideration, but they've been there for 6 weeks. We're in week 7 technically.
Wow.
So it's about trying to make sure that you push that through line through, whether it's your defense side or the prosecution.
Or the defense thinks we've already, they have not proved their case, so why should we rebut any of this?
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how this turns out.
All right, Jerika, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The number one food for regular.
Okay, so you guys, you got it. Similar conversation to what I already said. They're probably feeling confident, and they didn't feel they needed to get Sean Combs to testify or to put more people on. It's been weeks now. You may not want to, continue putting on more witnesses that aren't necessary. And they may feel like the prosecution didn't prove those charges, right? So that's another option, okay? So let's move on. I know a lot of people thought, oh, charges were dropped. They were not dropped. I'm going to explain it to you again, and then I'll go over an article just to demonstrate it. So with the with the racketeering and conspiracy charge, they were kind of going hand in hand in tandem together. They were using the testimony from Kid Cudi with the arson to his vehicle, and they were also using the testimony from Sean Combs' assistant, Capricorn Clark, where she said she was kidnapped to support both the racketeering and conspiracy charge, because there would have been multiple people involved. So it has to be 2 or more for the conspiracy charge, and then a racketeering. So they were using those 2 offenses as predicate acts to prove the racketeering and conspiracy charges. Well, they don't feel that they could really demonstrate that Sean Combs did the arson with Kid Cudi's car. I don't think they felt they had enough evidence to really tie Mr. Combs to the arson. So what the prosecution decided to do, they let the judge know that they weren't going to emphasize those 2 activities, the arson with Kid Cudi's car and the kidnapping with Mr. Combs' assistant, his former assistant, Capricorn Clark. They were going to now focus more on 2 other activities, the forced labor and also the sex trafficking. They feel that that is their strongest part of the case. They feel that they can demonstrate and prove the forced labor and the sex trafficking, because they do kind of go hand in hand. So they're saying they're going to focus on that evidence, that they feel they have enough to prove both the racketeering and conspiracy charges. So let's get to an article, okay? Let me pull it up. Give me 1 second. So the charges weren't really technically dropped. They're just using different evidence to prove the 2 charges, okay? So this article is coming from newsnationnow.com. It's titled Prosecutors Drop Some Charges in Diddy Case. And this is dated June 25th, 2025. Okay. And it reads as follows. Prosecutors have removed some of the charges related to their sprawling indictment of Sean Diddy Combs as the government is looking to create clear instructions for the jury. So let me pull up that picture again. I'll add a different picture for Mr. Combs because we're talking about him again. So let's pull him up and we'll just pull a different picture. Yeah, that's a nice picture of him. Okay. Attorneys for the Southern District of New York said they are removing instructions from the charge that relate to attempted kidnapping, attempted arson, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking, according to court findings. The government is no longer planning to proceed on these theories of liability, so instructions are no longer necessary, prosecutors wrote in a letter to Judge Aron Samarian on Tuesday. So basically, instead of focusing on, again, the arson of Kid Cudi's car and the kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, Mr. Combs' former assistant, they're going to focus on the evidence that was presented about the forced labor and sex trafficking, okay? But let's continue. The decision does not change the charges the office brought against Combs, but simplifies which predicate acts, okay? So predicate acts meaning now they're going to focus on forced labor and sex trafficking, okay? Acts the jury should focus on when deliberating on a verdict. So they have to prove those predicate acts, okay? To get to the racketeering and conspiracy charges, okay? Combs has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors say they will be focusing on the forced labor and sex trafficking portions of the charge. The Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Organizations Act, i.e. RICO, requires proof of at least 2 predicate acts. So they have to have 2 predicate acts or criminal offenses. So again, that would be 1, the forced labor, and then 2, the sex trafficking. The predicate acts must be related, okay, and those definitely are related, and demonstrate a pattern of criminal activity connected to an enterprise. So how they're going to connect the forced labor / and sex trafficking to a criminal enterprise. So they're looking at the Sean Combs, but his staff, how it was structured, how allegedly his staff made the plans. His staff bought some of the items needed. Again, victim number 1, Cassie Ventura, she was his musical artist, okay? The people that were involved in the preparation and the planning for the freak-offs allegedly was some of Mr. Combs' staff. You had some incidents that involved his security staff as well, and et cetera, okay? That's what is creating this criminal enterprise, okay? Had some notes before. Yeah, I have them here. So again, they're using the idea of the criminal enterprise is the environment. What kind of environment was the office, was the workspace? How the environment was created. It had allegedly drugging, forced abuse, violence. How was this criminal enterprise organized? Staff, how they were used. And now they have also become, some of them allegedly are the witnesses in the case against Mr. Combs and possibly future other defendants, okay? But it was organized. How did they organize? They used the phone, the texting, the calling, printing, ordering tickets, printing them, using the mail, using online, all of that. That's why they needed to review all the devices, the computers, the cell phones, the et cetera, to get a history. Have to have a history of this criminal activity, and this created the network, right? How it was powerful people in this network, how people had to pay, how if you didn't go along with things, you had problems, and they can make these problems go away, etc., etc. Okay, these are my notes. So let's continue with the article. So again, the predicate acts, you must relate them. They must demonstrate a pattern of criminal activity connected to an enterprise, okay? Both prosecutors and defense attorneys rested their case in the 6-week criminal trial against Sean Diddy Combs on Tuesday. Combs' defense team only introduced exhibits into evidence as their presentation, calling no witnesses to the stand. Prosecutors finished questioning their last witness, Joseph Cercillo, a special agent for Homeland Security investigations, marking the end of their nearly 30-day case. Closing arguments will begin Thursday, and the two sides will launch their last bid to sway a 12-member jury. The two sides will be engaged in a charging conference Wednesday, where they will work with the judge to hammer out the final jury instructions. So let me just go over here and check something. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next thing. Okay. So let's talk about the prosecution and defense having their closing arguments. And really, the trial is nearing the end. The case is going to go to the jury fairly soon. So we already talked about Combs not testifying. We already talked about day 29. We already talked about how there were no charges dropped. They're just changing the evidence for the predicate acts for the racketeering conspiracy charge. But that charge is still there. And now we're going to talk about the trial nearing the end and what was said to the jury, okay? So this article is by pbs.org. It's titled, "As Sex Trafficking Trial Nears End, Prosecutor Tells Jury It's Time to Convict Sean Diddy Combs." This article is by Michael R. Sisek and Larry Neumeister of the Associated Press. It's dated June 26, 2025. Okay. Sean Diddy Combs committed crime after crime, but thought his fame, wealth, and power put him above the law, a prosecutor told jurors Thursday as the hip-hop mogul's sex trafficking trial shifted to closing arguments. That ends now, Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic said. It's time to find the defendant guilty. Combs, 55, sat with his head down as Slavic highlighted testimony and evidence from the 7-week trial that she said proved sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and other charges. Wearing a sweater and khakis, he sometimes scribbled notes to his lawyers and shook his head as Slavic played one of his audio messages for the jury. So I want to show you a going to pause this here just for a second. I want to show you a picture of Mr. Combs because I've been showing you like really nice pictures of him, like in his suits. This is not how he's appearing in court. This is how Mr. Combs is appearing in court. Okay. So his hair is gray. He looks a little somber. He does not look as polished. You know, he doesn't look like we typically would see him. Okay. So let's continue on. Okay. Over the last several weeks, you've learned a lot about Sean Combs, Slavic said, launching into a nearly 5-hour presentation. He's the leader of a criminal enterprise. He doesn't take no for an answer. And now you know about many crimes he committed with members of his enterprise. Among the proof, Slavic argued, was evidence that Combs kidnapped an employee, was involved in setting rapper Kid Cudi's convertible ablaze, bribed a hotel guard, and carried out brutal crimes at the heart of this case. So again, kidnapped an employee, they're referring to his former assistant, Capricorn Clark. We already know about the alleged arson of Kid Cudi's vehicle. We know about the $100,000 payment allegedly to bribe the hotel guard for the alleged video purchase of the brutal attack on Mrs. Cassandra Ventura at the hotel. Okay, that's what they're referring to in all of that. Combs again and again forced, threatened, and manipulated his ex-girlfriends, Cassie and Jane, into having sex with escorts for his own entertainment, Slavic said, her lectern directly in front of jurors. The prosecutor said Combs forced or coerced Cassie, whose real name is Cassandra Ventura, and Jane, who testified under a pseudonym, to engage in days-long sex marathons known as freak-offs or hotel nights with drugs, violence, or by threatening financial harm or the release of video recordings of some of the hundreds of encounters. Hundreds. Up until today, the defendant was able to get away with these crimes, Slavic said. Bookending the trial's star, jurors again saw now infamous security footage of Combs hitting, kicking, and dragging Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles in 2016 after she tried to leave a freak off with a male sex worker. He knew exactly what he was doing. That is sex trafficking, Slavic told the jury, adding that Combs was knowingly using force and coercion to get Cassie back to that room where the escort was waiting. Slavic said Combs counted on silence and shame to enable and prolong his absence. He used a small army of employees, including personal assistants and bodyguards, to harm women and cover it up, she said. The theory of racketeering law is that when someone commits crime as part of a group, they're more powerful and dangerous, Slavic said. The defendant was a powerful man, but he became more powerful and dangerous because of his inner circle, his business, the enterprise. Combs and his inner circle committed hundreds of racketeering acts, she said. Members of Combs's family, including several of his children, watched from wooden benches in the packed courtroom. At one point, he gave them a thumbs up. Since his arrest at a Manhattan hotel last September, Combs and his lawyers have insisted he is innocent, though they conceded at trial that domestic violence occurred. Combs was abusive, physical, emotional, psychological, sexual abuse, Slavic said. The defendant doesn't deny the abuse. They just want to call it domestic violence and claim it doesn't have anything to do with the crimes charged. The defense will give its closing argument on Friday, followed by a prosecution rebuttal argument. Then Judge Arun Somarian said he will instruct jurors on the law before deliberations begin. Combs's lawyer built their case for acquittal through lengthy cross-examinations of government witnesses. Some testified only in response to subpoenas and insisted they didn't want to be there. Combs's lawyer contend there was no racketeering conspiracy because no employees agreed to join any conspiracy. In her closing, Slavic said employees repeatedly agreed to commit crimes for Combs, including delivering him drugs, accompanying him to kidnap his personal assistant, and locking Cassie in a hotel room after he stomped on her face. As Slavic returned repeatedly to the topic of Combs' sex marathons, jurors saw a slide that said the freak offs next to a photo of him laying on a bed, bathed in red light. Slavic reminded jurors of text messages and testimony that showed that the women didn't want to participate, including one in which Jane told Combs that she felt he gave her no choice. It's dark, sleazy, and makes me feel disgusted with myself. I feel it's the only reason you have me around and why you pay for the house, Jane wrote. I don't want to feel obligated to perform these nights with you in fear of losing the roof over my head. So we're going to go now to, we have a short video. So let's go to the short video. It's by CBS Mornings. It's titled Prosecution Defense Rests in Sean Diddy Combs Case with Music Mogul Not Testifying.
Regular BMs, huh? Okay, let's see.
Fastest way to clear out stuck poop is by.
Okay, sorry about that.
This brilliant device keeps your home cool in summer, even during.
Let me see. My apologies. Trying to make sure I have the right video. I'm pretty sure we talked about this, so maybe this is the right video. I'm trying to see now. I don't know. Let me check. When you have so many things open, it's hard to keep up with all of the links. All right, let's see. My apologies. That might be everything. I thought I had a video, and I think this is it. Watch this one already. Yeah, we watched this one already. Maybe I've wrapped it all up so fast. I'm surprised. Let me just double check to make sure I cover all my bases. Someone titled Just the Facts left a comment saying Diddy is getting life next week. He's definitely facing life. You know, when you have a jury and you have 12 different people, 12 different personalities, if they apply the law, and I'm assuming you believe that he's guilty, just the facts. I don't know. You didn't say that, but um, when you have 12 different people and their opinions, you know, I try not to be surprised, you know, by what someone may think or what their opinion is. Um, I didn't follow the trial so closely that I could say, with this charge, he's guilty, with that charge, he's guilty. Every charge is going to have elements that the prosecutor has to prove. Now, I've said it to you over and over again. Sean Combs is always going to have the position that these were willing participants. We were in relationships. This was part of our relationship. We chose to be swingers or have an open relationship, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be his opinion. Do you feel that they've done enough, that they put on enough evidence to demonstrate that? I know it was at least 2 times where 2 different witnesses expressed that they liked the freak offs. One person said they liked the freak offs. And I know Cassie Ventura was asking for freak offs in some of the testimony. And maybe that was just in the moment. And that's where you have to find a way to separate things and go through all of the evidence. It appears to be both Jane and Cassie Ventura that there was a lot of harm to them, that they suffered a long time. They had some medical issues. They were injured. Okay. But has the elements of each crime been proven? I didn't watch the testimony that closely. And I think what made it harder was the fact that it was not a public trial, so we were getting notes daily, and you don't get all of the information. Of course, you don't get all of the evidence. So you just don't know everything that was presented. And because Sean Combs didn't put on any witnesses, he didn't testify, you can only go with the evidence that was presented with the prosecution. Just the facts said a couple of messages. Okay, we will go over a couple of these. Let me just go up. Says, jurors are not supposed to use their opinion. Okay. Jurors are not supposed to use their opinion. Then it says, there's no way Diddy's legal team authored that underwhelming closing argument, which failed to address the core legal allegations. It appears Diddy may have written it himself. Unfortunately, I don't have any access to know what was said in the closing arguments. I have read articles about some of what the prosecution, some of the defense said, but I don't know who authored the closing arguments for the defense. And then lastly, this is the core basis of the case. Consent can be given and withdrawn at any time, even if someone consented 100 times before. Forcing or coercing them after they say no is illegal. I agree. You can withdraw your consent at any time. No absolutely means no. I agree. So I've got us to this point. I've covered all the days of trial, 29 days. I've talked a little bit about the fact that no charges were dropped. They're just focusing on the predicate acts. They just changed the predicate acts to focus on both forced labor and sex trafficking, okay? I've told you that Sean Combs decided not to testify for whatever reason, and the defense did not put on any witnesses. And I've told you that both the prosecution and the defense both have made their closing arguments. The prosecution has put on their rebuttal, and now they are preparing to give this case to the jury probably Monday. So if you have any thoughts, if you would like to put a comment, please do. And we will see if they will have a verdict. We will be on verdict watch next week, right? So thank you for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I am going to go over that information about they did some interviews with some of the insiders, some of the close people to Sean Combs, and what did they have to say about him? I'm going to do that video next. So thanks for spending this time with me, and I hope you'll catch me in that video. Have a great day, everybody. Bye, everybody. Be safe, be smart, be savvy.